Bullying. It's a plague on our world. It's a person picking on another person simply because they're different. Why would someone drive someone to feel so alone, so hurt, or even lead them to self-harm or suicide, simply because they're just a little bit different than themselves? For the human race, it's a natural instinct to bully. We pick on the smaller people. It's survival of the fittest all over again. We may be more evolved than other species, but that doesn't mean that we don't live by the same instinct. We all think that we know better than each other, we all think that we're better, and we all judge before we even get to know. For these reasons, I think that bullying can never really be truly stopped, but it can be reduced. We've all sat through the bullying presentations at school, but how many people actually listen? How many people actually care? How many people realize what their bullying can really do to another person, what lengths it can drive them to? Because of this, bullying presentations should be more focused on what happens to someone that is bullied or how they deal with it afterwards, not so much on a person picking on another person, because people always pick on other people. It's just the way it works. That's just the way our society is. I've been to enough of these presentations to know that things like self-harm and suicide are never talked about for whatever reason. It's just kind of a touchy subject, I think, for some people. Some people just don't want to admit that there are people out there that commit suicide just because of bullying, or self-harm, or burn themselves just because they're bullied. Even though, after it all, self-harm is probably the top way of dealing with depression, bullying, or simply just feeling alone, feeling not wanted by anybody else. Self-harm, from what I've heard, it's a way for people to escape the pain they feel in their everyday lives and just focus on that one thing, the self-induced pain. I don't want to sound like everybody else, but really, suicide should never be the answer, and no one should ever be driven to commit suicide because their life is just so horrible, just because they're picked on every single day and they feel like their life isn't worth living anymore. It's probably the worst way to die. Think about it this way. Say you're one of those popular kids that picks on everyone. There's this kid that you've picked on for months and months and months and months on end, for really no reason, just because that kid was a little bit different than you. One day, that kid committed suicide. How could you live with yourself knowing that you took another person's life? How could you live with yourself knowing that it was all your fault? Could you live with yourself if you knew that a perfectly beautiful young person was never going to come home, was never going to see their family again? Could you live with yourself knowing that a family now has to bury their own child? Could you live with that burden on your shoulders? They did nothing to you. Nothing at all. But for some reason, you just decided that it would be a good idea to pick on them, and now they're dead. They committed suicide because you killed everything they had to live for, all their hopes and dreams destroyed by just words that you told them, because they took it to heart, and then they had nothing left to live for. And now, there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do to reverse time. It's too late. That person's gone forever. So I'll ask you one last time, could you live with yourself if you took someone's life?